Welcome to Just Us, the podcast where we explore the magic of nerdy living. I'm DNDWife, your artistic guide to all things geeky and wonderful.
And I'm DM Eguile, your seasoned storyteller and passionate gamer. Together we're here to share our adventures and insights into living a fulfilling nerdy life.
Each week we dive into topics like navigating relationships in a nerdy world, maximizing your RPG experiences in small spaces, and growing your own herbs and veggies on a tiny patio.
We'll also share our favorite hobbies, budget-friendly tips for having epic fun, and stories from our homebrew world of Extreas.
Whether you're a fellow nerd, a tabletop enthusiast, or just looking for inspiration to pursue your passions, we've got something for you.
So grab your dice, your favorite snacks, and join us for a journey into the heart of nerdy living.
Tune in to Just Us, where love, creativity, and adventure are always on the agenda. Welcome back to Just Us. Tonight we're diving into something near and dear to our hearts, creating a shared workspace that's both functional and full of nerdy charm.
Whether you're working on epic D&D campaigns, painting miniatures, or managing creative projects, a shared space can fuel creativity if done right.
We'll share how we build our dream workspace, tackle challenges, and offer tips to help you create your own.
So grab your favorite beverage, settle in, and let's talk shared workspaces.
Yeah, so, building ours was super, super fun.
I mean...
But it didn't start off that way.
Yeah. I mean, we've had, I think multiple iterations. I mean, it probably starts back in, when we were first dating, and I had this giant multi-sectional
huge
workstation.
Yeah.
It was a corner desk,
a large corner desk. It was 5 feet on either side.
Yeah, and we kind of had shared because it basically had two desks
pretty
setups.
much. Yeah.
And at that point we were still in college, so we were studying and doing stuff. So we kind of was our first step before we were actually living together.
Yeah, sharing our little workspaces in your apartment.
Yeah, I think that was the one thing that kind of bummed us out when we did get our first apartment, and we've talked about a lot, was it being so cramped.
Yeah, I mean
I think it was less than 600 square feet. It was so small.
775 square feet.
Something like that, right? It was so small.
Tiny.
So it was
And it was just a one bedroom, so we had no space for a study or a bonus room.
I think we tried the lap things that sit in your lap, or a little pop-up
holders,
coffee table. It was mostly just laptops and laps.
Yeah, it just gets really tedious to bring it out, put it back away, bring it out, put it back away. It just, and then you have to find a space for it to be in all the time.
Right.
So...
Yeah, so I think that was a big deal when we finally moved to the location we're here now, and now we had a whole secondary room. We had an extra space to create that workspace we've always wanted. Yeah. And with most projects, it kind of started off pretty meh.
Yeah, and it kind of got out of hand real quick too. We had this idea, this concept that we wanted for our bonus room, and in theory, it was wonderful.
It totally thought it was going to be great. It made total sense.
We have these two really tall shelves that pretty much almost reach to our ceilings. So we wanted those up against either side of the window, because I wanted to create a little sort of box so I could put a little window seat so I could read. But it created such a little claustrophobic space in there.
Yeah, because then, our room is just a rectangle, and then we put two kind of separate desks on either end of the room, essentially splitting the room in half, with
and facing away from each other,
right, with our backs to each other.
Yeah.
And thought that was going to be the best
that was
thing
gonna
ever.
work.
It also took up so much space in the room.
So much. I think it was because we kind of had everything up against the wall. Nothing really had space to float. And we kind of do have space up against the wall now, but I think it's organized in a way that's not in the way.
Oh, yeah. and I mean, I think as with what happens with a lot of, especially if you have an empty room or a room that's not really used, when you kind of fail or it doesn't quite work out, it starts to become a junk room or a clutter room.
Yeah.
And I think that's tough, because sometimes you kind of lose hope, and you're just okay,
I can never salvage this.
Right. I messed up once. That room is over now, unless something crazy comes up.
Right. It's just storage now.
It's going to be a storage room. Yeah. Put the drapes up. It doesn't matter. Let the spiders take over.
It's where we throw everything when guests come over.
Right. And so we kind of had to come back at it. And I remember scrolling online on Amazon, because I have a nasty habit of just being an Amazon junkie.
Right.
And I'd come across a tea desk, and I remember I floated it to you of hey, I have an idea. It's going to be a little crazy. And I kind of had to base it because I was like, you're just going to have to go with it. You have to trust me because it's going to look crazy to start.
Yeah, it was a little weird. I've never had a tea desk before, obviously, because I've never shared any desk with anybody. Yeah. So this was an interesting experiment, but I like it.
Right, and for those listening, a tea desk is exactly like it sounds. It's basically a giant T with, the line down the middle, with each edges of the bottom of it being basically a separate desk with a middle partition between the two desks. Now, the glory thing about us is one of us is left-handed and one of us is right-handed. It's
perfect.
So it works well in that I can sit on one side and be comfortable, and so can she, and it also makes us both work in the center together.
And really well too, or we're not bumping into each other or putting our dominant hands in each other's way. It's really nice. I really like this setup. I think it creates this really nice shared middle space, I think, not just for shared collaborations but like meals, snacks.
And then rather than boxing in our windows, we now have our desk facing the window. So now, if you're sitting at the desk, you can crack open the window or the blinds. You can actually look outside.
Right.
It makes the space feel so much larger. Right. And so then what we were able to do was then move all of the bookshelves into the opposite corner of the room. So now we have the DM standard multiple tall bookshelves of miniatures surrounding an entire quarter of one wall. But then later we kind of came up with another idea to add even more efficiency to the room.
Right, because our desks can only do so much. We do have computers on there, so there's only so much work that we can do that's not computer work on there. We needed a second table workspace, which we ended up getting a really cool, it's just a standard, I think, 4x6 foot folding table.
It's a 4x8
or something. Yeah, 4x2. There we go.
Something like that.
And we just kind of put a really sort of easy cover on it, and it's just our own joint craft space.
Yeah, and the nice thing is by having a cover, we have extra storage underneath, and then it is kind of nice because where we have it, your desk area kind of just rotates into your painting station.
Yeah, it's really cool. So, DM Eguile has his crafting station on one side that's a little closer to the door, but in my little nook, I have my separate little permanent painting station set up, so I can easily, really quickly pivot from working on my computer, working on something, or even getting like reference photos off of there, pivot over to my painting station and start working immediately.
And now if you're having a little bit of trouble maybe visually, seeing this in your heads, always go check out our Discord, the Couple of Nerds Discord, where we'll be posting some of the pictures of our setup to kind of give some people some ideas themselves. So if you want to get a better idea of it, be sure to go join our Discord, join us in the conversations, even if it's just to lurk and look at photos. Yeah. We don't blame you.
It's it's really nice to see what other people are doing sometimes, because you might not adopt what they're doing, but it might show you like maybe, I was doing it, the wrong way or something. I can do it this way, and it might work a little better. So
right, and then obviously now we've kind of evolved as we've gone from beyond just setting up D&D sessions with our now podcast. We've also converted much of this room into our kind of studio that we are recording right now.
Absolutely.
And the glory is the tea desk really makes it easy to kind of have a conversation with someone, since we're not back to back anymore.
Yeah, it's really nice to actually be able to face my partner and not be like, oh hey, how's it going over there behind me, and not really see you.
Right, you got to turn around, and half the time if you're so close, your chair won't turn all the way around. I feel like, especially with our shared workspace, our goal was to actually feel like we're sharing it and not like you're only kind of
competing for
this is my draw the tape down the middle of the room, this is my space, this is your space.
I think it's just we were still in that sort of like college phase where we were just basing everything off of where we lived before, which was college dorms, things like that, and that's how they always organized their furniture. So we had to grow up a little bit, find our own kind of style and organization.
And then obviously, we are in a bedroom, so we have a closet. So in there, we've done a lot of kind of storage. If as much as we try to hide the DM kind of crafting and miniatures and buildings and all my supplies, in the closet we have those kind of build your own stackable cubes.
Super fun.
And that allows it to both be easily accessible, but also we can kind of hide it away from time to time. So that way,
but in an organized manner that doesn't look too cluttered or too, crazy.
Right, because I feel like with, especially with workstations, it's like, okay, we can have this station, but then it's like only you and I could ever be in here.
Yeah.
So
we're the only ones who know how it's set out.
Or you're using so much of the space that like the only place you can go is like these two spots.
Yeah.
So we really wanted that like fluidity to kind of go through there.
Absolutely.
And having extra bookshelves. I'm pretty sure we're going to be probably trying to put more shelves in here at some point just to get more storage.
And we originally just had the 2, but we ended up adding a third bookshelf with LED lights. And it also has a really nice cabinet on the bottom. So it's like 4 shelves and then a cabinet. And that really helps out too, because we can put all like our unpainted miniatures under there, all our works in progress, and they're kind of out of the way.
I don't want anyone just stumbling upon.
Yeah, or if there's surprises for the table and we have people over, we don't want them to have spoilies.
Right. But not to say, obviously we've found something that's worked now for the time being, but it's not to say there aren't like tons of different challenges that we've had to find various solutions, or just had to just either learn to deal with or just not do it at all.
Right. And there's some challenges that we don't deal with that other people might based on their hobbies.
Yeah.
Like there's one that I do deal with. I love sewing. It's one of, my great passions. One of my biggest dreams is to be able to hopefully someday make my own clothes, things like that. I just haven't had the space for it. And so starting that up in something like this, no matter how big the room is, sewing is really one of those where you need the full room to be able to do it.
Like you need the large dedicated tables
for the cutting, the patterns. You need space for all the dress forms that you're going to be putting, like draping the clothes over. You need space for all of the not just the patterns, but the fabrics, the sewing thread, your machine. If you machine sew, there's so much that goes into it. It's just really difficult to share a workspace in that space with someone else.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's like the same thing with like a lot of like the crafting and like the building kind of side, where it's like you have to limit kind of what we have access to, because obviously we also live in an apartment, and so by being in an apartment, that makes it where it's even tougher. So there's a lot of rules on what you can and can't have. Obviously we don't have a garage, so it is kind of that you have to kind of pick and choose kind of what you have, and it's kind of like what we're stressing is like, not everything can be a shared workspace. So sometimes, like if you have a particular hobby,
right, like woodworking, that takes a lot of space. You might have to have
your own space. So it's like not everything can be a shared space. And so really coming in, you kind of have to kind of assess like, okay, we would like a shared space, but what for? What hobby? Yeah, what are those things that we're interested that we can find together? So for us, we had to kind of decide that. So, obviously we have a sewing machine, but it's more on the table in the kitchen or something.
Yeah, it gets put away and then brought out when needed, not just out somewhere.
Right.
And there's also the unfortunate part of the different preferences of each person, right? Partners are not the same. We're not going to think the same, and we're not going to have the same likes and dislikes, and we change. So what we liked yesterday, we might not like today. It can get difficult.
I mean, I think the best example is that you're like Tchotchke City over here.
Yeah.
And you have like all kinds of things on
all
shelves
sorts.
And little things and painter stuff and minis. And I think there's a double-headed giant holding a paint bottle over there.
Figurines.
Whereas mine's kind of
bare,
trash.
Kind of Spartan.
Some stuff, some leftover cups. I think that does say a lot about where when you make the workstation, it does kind of represent two people.
Yeah, it reflects both of you.
So you have to kind of have a little bit of, I think, like especially on of just like, let the other one have their space, and just kind of let that be like, obviously my side of the desk is kind of what I do, but you should obviously have an understanding that, you can't just do that for the whole space.
Yeah, I like little tchotchkes up on my desk, desk buddies, things like that. I like having them around. It just makes it feel like I've got a bunch of friends around me. But not everybody likes that cluttered sort of kind of messiness, which it can come off as sometimes. Not saying it is, but the different interpretations we have. So you might not appreciate that, and otherwise I might not like such an empty desk.
Yeah, and like another way to look at it too is we have some friends of ours that one of them is more artistic and the other one's more gamer.
Yeah.
And so they kind of have it set up to where, the other can be gaming it up at his computer while one can be drawing on the couch next to them. So they have kind of this shared space where they can be near each other, but they're not necessarily obviously
sitting right next to each other.
Going to be plugged into a game, wanting someone to be yelling and screaming while they're trying to delicately draw a character.
Right.
So it is that kind of, maybe set aside spaces. So if if one of your partner, your person is a reader, maybe, build them a nice little quiet place they can read so that when they're reading, they can share the space with you and then get headphones.
Right. I think that's so nice. And it also says a lot about the partner, right, being considerate, knowing what might cause issues, and then kind of anticipating that and taking care of that. I think that'll go a long way to sort of mitigating some of the issues that come up in a shared workspace.
Yeah, because I think, the misnomer is like, okay, well, the shared space has to be the shared space,
yeah,
right?
It's for both of us.
And so sometimes it's like, well, it's not really feasible, or you don't want to cram, like we were saying, you don't want to cram everything a part of that when there might be somewhere else. So don't be afraid of essentially what sounds weird, but having a shared space all over the house, the apartment. Maybe you happen to have like a really nice window that you can set up as a reading nook, and that's also a place where you can
put tchotchkes.
Have your I have this really interesting setup where I have all of my like consoles and gaming setups on a movable like TV rack.
Yeah.
So I can turn pretty much any room I want into a gaming room by just moving this like console stand all throughout the apartment.
Oh yeah, it's awesome.
Because obviously not all the time are you wanting to be gaming, right?
Yeah.
So that way I can game pretty much anywhere, anytime I want.
And you don't have to worry about disrupting because it comes with headphones. It's got everything on that
Right.
workspace.
All I gotta do is plug it in.
Yeah. Super awesome. All you need is power. But that's not the only consideration you've got to make. There's things like family, children, all of those can make...
The little ones.
Yeah, they can make workspaces, especially shared workspaces, a lot more challenging. They can get into a lot of things. And if you like hobbies that require small moving parts or potentially toxic materials, like, say, working with some of the paints I work with or working with resins or 3D printing, all of those can be, a little hazardous for children.
Yeah, and I mean, and we're not even just talking, the children of the birthed kind, but also of the furry kind as well. In that you have to be careful with certain things and have various ways of locking up stuff and being aware of what you can and can't have out. We've always made, certain consignments for our animals, but obviously being able to use a separate room is always nice because you're able to shut the door and close it off. But if you can't, one of those like style of desks that actually has a closing mechanism are always really nice. They're a little more expensive,
a little bit,
but it does make it where you can have a kind of your own personal space
sitting
out in the open, and then you can kind of close it, perhaps lock it, and kind of keep away any kind of people you don't want messing with your particular area.
Right. I would also recommend using child locks. They're really great for keeping not only children out, but little fur babies out too, as well as some adults that might be a little nosy. You never know. I would also recommend storing supplies on high shelves. It's just for safety. It helps everyone. Obviously, if they're too heavy, don't do that. Maybe put them in a cabinet with clothes and the child locks.
Locking cabinets are really good,
right? If it's a fairly like small item, you can place it on top, and it should be out of the way enough that the children or the fur babies won't get into it. And obviously, organizing carefully, I think, is really good. It always helps to know where everything is. That way, you don't have to go scrounging and making a mess for it.
Right. Yeah, and so, I mean, I would say, ow, I just bit my own tongue.
Oh, no.
I would say, what we've had is, a lot of, trial and error, steps, failures, successes.
Yep.
And even now, I think we're still kind of working more and more on building our perfect workspace.
It's not done yet.
I mean, this is just us in an apartment. I think we've dreamed and spoken about you having like a room where it's nothing but bookshelves. And
I want the room from Beauty and the Beast where it's just like 2 stories of nothing but books.
Yeah, right. And so there's that, or having our gaming room where it's just nothing but TVs and entertainment and air conditioning.
Oh.
But really, I think it comes down to just, first picking like the essentials and like using those to kind of start your build, essentially.
Right. In a shared workspace, you always want to think about a couple of things. The first one being the desk.
Yeah. And I think there's so many different varieties, especially like standing.
Options.
But really, it also depends on, too, what you're looking for. Corner desks, if it's by yourself, where we started out with, are really nice at not taking as much space, but still being rather large.
Yeah.
You can essentially turn 2 corner desks into a giant U desk for 2 people.
Yep.
But it really comes down to, how many people first? Do you need, do you need it for 1 person or do you need it for 2?
That's true. You always have to make sure that because you might put in furniture that might make the room too cramped for you guys to be in.
Yeah, and I also think too, like there's a lot of like the old style where it's like these large kind of oak,
the big wooden desks. Yeah.
And so you kind of want to make sure you also have form and function. We found we've had a couple different styles, like the traditional, but like these new ones where there's a lot of like kind of metal framing underneath that allows a lot more extra storage for like printers and other materials. Definitely amplifies a lot. And for us too, getting different monitor holders like take your monitor
that
off the
up.
desk. Yeah, the monitor arm. Really helps on your desk as well.
Absolutely.
Because it definitely, not only is getting the right desk, but maximizing like the space on the top is a big deal. I don't use a lot of mine because I still have a laptop. I imagine if I had a computer, it would be a little different, but I have to have my laptop on my desk.
Yeah, so it takes a little more space.
So we'll see what happens if I ever get an actual computer or not.
This always reminds me of like that one Big Bang Theory episode where Raj and Sheldon are having to share an office, Raj brings in the giantest desk he can find, and it's huge. It takes up the whole space. So think about that when you're thinking about a shared workspace, right? Do you really want your desk to be the entire room?
Right. and two, like obviously like shelves and storage are like super important. Now obviously it's tough because like us, we live in an apartment, so you're kind of reluctant to necessarily start like tearing up the walls to put up stuff, and like thumbtacks and like 3M tape can only hold so much.
Right,
so you got to balance like what exactly are you planning to have? Is it pictures? Is it a bunch of little hangables?
Yeah.
And you got to kind of make like, pick and choose which ones you want, and try to maybe put your heavier stuff on your desk or on your shelves in a bookcase, because not everything needs to be on a shelf.
Right. If you have a lot of like figurines and don't know what to do with the boxes, I think also being able to hang them up as floating boxes. You can even use thumbtacks because it'll be on the inside and nobody sees them. They just look so nice. It keeps the boxes you need for the figurines when you move, but it also looks like a nice little art plate, like a little art piece,
Yeah, and we always push for, mixing that functionality and form, you want to kind of have both, because, if everything is just perfectly like adhered to the wall, you might not feel as cozy in your space. And you want to have that little bit of both, that it's a space for you to focus and do work on, which is what we've pushed for, but it's also a space you actually want to be in,
right?
Too.
To enjoy, to have fun in.
If you just recreate your cubicle at work, you're not going to want to do work there, just like you don't want to do work
at work.
Right?
So it's really nice to have that. But also, one of the last things probably that you must think about is, do you need extra table space?
Yeah.
Do you need extra space for hobbies that require like a permanent table setup or something, in which case foldable tables I think are a really great tip for this, because not only can you obviously set them up and then take them down when you need them, but you can also set them up as a permanent spot, buy a nice cover for them so it keeps the bottom, like you said, as storage.
They're never gonna know.
Yeah, you can use the bottom as storage. It gets covered up so it doesn't look like anything horrible, and it gives you that whole top area to work on and craft in, which is really nice.
Right. And that's like just, obviously, like we said, the main stuff you need, because that's going to be what you work on.
Yeah.
Invest in a good chair, because obviously you're going to be sitting in it for a while. And
cushion.
And also you don't need to have the top of the line with these, if you're spending $1,000 on a chair, I think it's a little overkill unless you have like spinal bifida or some sort of back problem.
Yeah.
Most chairs.
Or you can afford it. I mean, if you can afford it, more power to you.
That's cool. But really, the biggest thing are like the personal touches, right? After that, it's making the space your own, and really, I think especially with us for the combo, having two people, you want to really decorate with shared interests.
Absolutely,
because rather having like the staunch, like, okay, this person's into this and this person's into that, we'll find ways to maybe mix them a little, because again, you start to get into that like college dorm draw line in the same
pretty
kind
much,
of thing.
yeah.
So fill your space with items that make both of you happy, right? Whether it's miniatures, figurines, they have figurines of their favorite anime, you have figurines of yours, and so it's more of this kind of feng shui balance kind of thing that I like.
Right. And I get it. It's a little difficult to balance that because you might not have the same shared interests. You and I lucked out. We like a lot of the same things.
Yay.
So it's really easy for us to kind of marry the two interests together and find something that works. But for people who have, varying interests that are quite apart from each other, that can be difficult. So I would take the time to talk with each other, see what you feel comfortable with displaying. And then you'll find out that you might be comfortable with a lot more being out there for your partner than they initially thought you might be okay with.
Right. I mean, for us, like, we have everything from like D&D, anime, movies, art,
everything,
because we always felt that, the workspace should represent you and what you enjoy. And so, it really just kind of go with that. And there's really no wrong move you can make. Right.
Absolutely.
For me, a big thing is obviously lighting is a big deal, because, the better you can see, the better you can work. And so for me, like, with LEDs and things like Govee and buying stuff on Amazon, there's a lot of really cool, unique light options for both like focused lighting as well as overhead lighting.
Yep.
So, it is really essential. There's budget friendly. I personally love Govee. We have one of their LED curtains that go over to the closet.
It is so cool.
But yeah, it just really kind of sets up the room too, right? And so if you're looking for a quiet place, then have that soft light,
low lighting,
but being able to switch the light using like smart bulbs is really awesome. So if you want that quiet space, it becomes that. If you need the super bright light because you're trying to paint,
you need it to look like a research facility, it can
do
it.
And that really is going to be probably the best way that you can do. And then obviously like the little extra stuff you might find, whether it's handcrafted or something you bought on Etsy.
Right. I think Etsy is perfect for those kinds of things. You finding unique handcrafted decor based on your favorite fandoms. They've got so much on there from a variety of super talented people. So I think it's always good to kind of shop around. You can always help out a local or a small business. It's really nice. And you get all the stuff you like.
Right. And I think that's just the main focus is, don't rush it.
No.
It's not going to be set up unless you have lots and lots of money. Which,
then do whatever you want.
God bless you if you do. But mostly it's kind of a build as you go. And also it's going to be something you're always going to be changing.
Yeah.
You're never going to have it set in stone unless you build it in stone.
Right.
But it is something that you always just want it to be a representation of you. To me, your workspace is kind of like your bedroom as your childhood. But you don't actually have to sleep in it anymore. And so you really want it to be that place where you can really feel comfortable. So then all the creative works, all the the stress goes away, and that you can really focus on whatever creative thing you want to do, whatever hobby, whatever arts and crafts, even if it's just watching anime, or playing video games. It's just your space to where you can be you.
And remember, even exactly like you said, right? The childhood bedroom, that even changes as we grow up and time goes by. So the same thing happens with a workspace. We might like new things, want to change it up. Don't feel afraid to do that and try to make your workspace better. I think that's always a piece of advice.
Right. And so that's a wrap for tonight's episode of Just Us. We hope our journey and tips to inspire you to create your own perfect shared workspace.
Remember, it's not just about where you work, but how you make it yours. Add personal touches, stay organized, and have fun with it.
Don't forget to join us in the conversation on Discord. Share your workplace photos and let us know what works for you.
Don't forget to like, review, and subscribe. It really helps our podcast grow.
Thanks for listening. And as always, we'll see you next time on Just Us.
Bye-bye. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Just Us. We hope you enjoyed diving into our nerdy world and picked up some tips for your own adventures.
We'd love to hear about your own nerdy hobbies and see your unique living spaces. Connect with us on a Couple of Nerds Discord. Share your stories, photos, and join the conversation with fellow nerds.
And don't forget to check out our Couple of Nerds YouTube channel. We post videos showcasing the hobbies, crafts, and small living space innovations we cover in each episode.
Whether it's painting miniatures, growing a garden on your balcony, or setting up the perfect RPG space in your apartment, we've got plenty of inspiration and tips to share.
Subscribe, like, and comment on our videos and stay connected with us through all our adventures.
Until next time, keep embracing your inner nerd and living your best geeky life.
Thanks for listening to Just Us, where we come together in nerdy harmony.